The biggest lie about Jovenel Moïse's assassination is that it was just a foreign hit job. The bullets tell one story. The open door tells a darker story. Yes, the mercenaries fired the shots, but the real mystery is how they reached the president's bedroom at all. I'm Arturo, and this is Latin Laura, where we explore Latin America's history, mysteries, true crime, and local legends, always whispering our region's intrigue. Subscribe for fresh revelations every week, perfect for your next campfire debate. There is a house in the hills above Port-au-Prince where the night still feels unfinished. After midnight on July 7th, 2021, armed men moved toward the private home of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. The city below was restless, but the house should have been protected. A president does not usually die in his own bedroom while the state sleeps outside the gate. So the question is not only who pulled the trigger, the darker question is this: who had already sold the key? And before this story ends, even the bullets will testify. They will speak colder than politicians, cleaner than rumors, and heavier than all the midnight whispers that followed the assassination. But bullets can only tell you where they came from. They cannot explain why the door was open. For that, we have to follow one object through Haiti's modern history: the key to a gate, the key to a neighborhood, the key to the palace, the key to the state itself. Jovenel Moïse was killed in the early hours of July 7th, 2021, inside his residence in Pèlerin, in the hills of Pétion-Ville, near Port-au-Prince. His wife, Martine Moïse, was badly wounded and survived. The attackers were linked to a transnational plot that moved through South Florida, Colombia, and Haiti. Some were former Colombian soldiers, some were Haitian or Haitian-American intermediaries, some were businessmen, fixers, political aspirants, and security operators chasing contracts, power, and a new government they believed they could help create. But Haiti is not a simple headline. It is not a curse, no matter how many outsiders like to whisper that word when black republics bleed. Haiti is a country where the land keeps receipts. It remembers empire, it remembers debt, it remembers occupation, it remembers dictators in dark glasses and foreign soldiers in clean helmets, and it remembers the ordinary citizen, always forced to pay the price when powerful men decide that violence is cheaper than politics. To understand that bedroom, we have to step backward into the corridor, not because the past excuses the murder, it does not, but because the murder did not fall from the sky like lightning. It grew out of a long season when security in Haiti no longer belonged only to the state. Guns moved through politics, politicians moved through gangs, businessmen bought protection, police officers fought crime by day and sometimes touched the shadow by night. In some neighborhoods, sovereignty was not a flag, it was a checkpoint. Wait, notice this. A state does not collapse only when buildings fall or presidents flee. Sometimes the building is still standing, the flag is still waving, the anthem is still played, but the real power has already moved into the street. It is the man who decides whether the bus passes, the group that controls the road to the market, the gunmen who decide the price of fuel, the hours of fear, the punishment for disobedience. That is not the absence of order. That is another order. After the fall of the Duvalier dictatorship in 1986, Haiti did not simply wake up free from the old machinery of fear. Dictatorships leave fingerprints on the walls. Paramilitary networks, former agents, armed loyalists, and political enforcers remained in the shadows. Some attacked activists and human rights defenders. Some found profit in trafficking. Some became muscle for political patrons. The uniforms changed, but the lesson remained. In a weak state, violence could become a profession, and a profession needs clients. Then came another cut in 1995 when Haiti dismantled its army. For many Haitians, that army was not a sacred institution. It carried the memory of coups, repression, and old terror. But when a country dissolves a violent institution without building a trusted replacement strong enough to hold the ground, the men trained in violence do not evaporate. Some became guards, some became brokers, some became criminals, some entered political networks. The state lost one sword, and many smaller blades appeared in the dark. From there, the map became harder to read. You could stand on one street and ask, who rules here? The answer might change by the corner. A mayor, a police commander, a gang leader, a businessman, a senator's cousin, a neighborhood broker, a man with a radio, a man with a rifle. Haiti became a place where the state was not always the only actor providing security. Sometimes the state competed with gangs. Sometimes it tolerated them. Sometimes it is negotiated. Sometimes it fed them. This is the marketplace of force. One patron wants protection. Another patron wants revenge. A politician wants protests silenced. A gang wants a market, a road, a port, a neighborhood, a tax on daily life. Everyone claims they're creating order. But the mother walking for water sees the truth better than any minister. She knows which street belongs to which armed group. She knows when the road is open. She knows when to lower her eyes. She knows that the Constitution does not protect you at a checkpoint. After the second overthrow of Jean-Bertrand Aristide in 2004, the United Nations mission known as MINUSTAH entered Haiti speaking the language of stabilization. The mission came with soldiers, police, advisors, promises of security, and the heavy confidence of the outside world. It faced a brutal dilemma. Should it strike armed groups first and then support elections, or wait for elections and act with a government that had a cleaner mandate? It chose the second path because even force prefers to enter wearing the mask of legitimacy. After René Préval was elected, the mission moved harder against gangs. Raids came into poor neighborhoods. Some armed groups were weakened. Some young men stepped away from gang life through community programs. There were periods when violence seemed to lower its voice. But peace built by outsiders is always fragile when the people do not fully trust the hands building it. Civilians suffered during operations, poor communities carried the bruises, and then came scandals that cut deeply into Haitian memory. There was sexual exploitation by peacekeepers. There was cholera, a disease that tore through Haiti after the earthquake of 2010 and became linked in public memory to the foreign presence that had promised protection. The blue helmet became a symbol with two faces, security in one eye, humiliation in the other. So when MINUSTAH ended in 2017, some saw it as the closing of an occupation chapter. Others saw something more dangerous. The military muscle was leaving before Haitian institutions were strong enough to hold the gate. And the gate mattered. The Haitian police were left carrying a burden heavier than their own bones. Many officers tried to serve with courage, but the force was underpaid, poorly equipped, politically pressured, and accused at times of corruption or collaboration with the armed world around it. Some officers defended citizens, others drifted toward the same shadow economy they were meant to fight. Even armed factions linked to active and former police appeared in unrest, including the group known as Phantom 509. When the badge itself becomes divided, the citizen no longer knows whether the uniform is shelter or storm. This is where Haiti's security crisis became more than a crime problem. It became a sovereignty problem. Who decides who may move? Who decides who pays? Who punishes? Who protects? Who collects? When the answer changes by neighborhood, then the state is no longer a single door. It is a house with too many keys and too many men claiming the right to use them. Into this house walked Jovenel Moïse. He came to power after a bitter electoral crisis that stretched from October 2015 into January 2017. He belonged to the Tête-Kale political family, the same current associated with former President Michel Martelly. His presidency began already carrying the weight of suspicion, postponed elections, accusations, anger, and exhaustion. Then came the Petrocaribe scandal, tied to missing public funds from the Venezuelan oil corporation. In the streets, the question was not poetic. It was simple. Where did the money go? By 2018, protests were rising. By February 2019, Haiti saw a national shutdown demanding Moïse's resignation. Roads froze, businesses closed, anger moved through the capital like heat before a storm. Moïse did not answer by loosening his grip. He tightened it. Elections stalled, parliament emptied. Local offices were filled by appointment rather than by voting. Decrees replaced debate. The courts were pressured. Judges were dismissed. A constitutional referendum was pushed into the air like a blade. Then came February 7th, 2021, the date that split Haiti's legal imagination. Many opposition leaders, civil society groups, and legal voices argued that Moïse's mandate ended that day. Moïse insisted he had another year. From far away, that might sound like an argument over calendars, but in a fragile country, a calendar can become a weapon. If one side says the president's time is over and the president says his time continues, every institution must choose which clock it obeys. And when institutions are weak, men with guns become the clock everyone fears. Moïse needed more than speeches and decrees. He needed force on the ground. He had the police, at least officially. He had revived the army, but it was too small and too weak to dominate the country's security landscape. So the old Haitian bargain returned in a new costume. Political power leaned toward armed actors who could control streets, discourage protests, and make certain neighborhoods feel the cost of opposition. This is where Jimmy Barbecue Chérizier enters the story, a former police officer who became one of Haiti's most feared gang leaders. Around him, the alliance known as the G9 family and allies formed. In official language, these were criminals. In the living language of Port-au-Prince, they were also tax collectors, gatekeepers, punishers, brokers, distributors, protectors, predators, and sometimes the only authority that arrived. Chérizier spoke in revolutionary tones, but the street knew an older rhythm. Every gun claims a cause, then asks for payment. The G9 alliance mattered because it gathered several powerful gangs under one banner and made criminal force look almost political. It could denounce elites while controlling markets. It could claim to bring peace while leaving families trapped in terror. It could present itself as order while becoming another form of fear. That is the mirror that breaks the eye. In places where the state abandons people, even predators learn to speak the language of protection. That does not make the predator a liberator. It shows how hunger for authority can be weaponized. Here, the wording matters. The record left behind by human rights investigators does not require us to pretend that every gang was a puppet on a single string. Haiti's armed groups were autonomous, ambitious, territorial, and dangerous in their own right. But the evidence also points to something colder. State actors and officials were accused of giving armed groups space, resources, protection, and tolerance, while poor opposition neighborhoods absorbed the violence. The arrangement was not always written down. In Haiti, some contracts are signed by silence. The names of those neighborhoods should not be rushed past like scenery. La Saline, Bel Air, Cité Soleil. Between 2018 and 2020, these communities suffered waves of killing, burning, rape, and terror. They were poor neighborhoods, and many were seen as centers of opposition to Moïse's government. The dead were not abstractions. They were vendors, parents, children, neighbors, people who understood politics not as theory, but as the sound of footsteps outside the door. At least 240 civilians were killed across those major attacks, according to the records left behind by human rights investigators. Houses were burned, bodies were mutilated, women were assaulted. Police stations sat close enough to hear the terror and still failed to save the people. This is where the word security becomes bitter. For the powerful, security meant survival in office. For the gangs, it meant territory and money. For ordinary Haitians, it often meant learning which danger to obey. So, by 2021, Moïse had made himself difficult to remove through normal politics. Parliament was hollow. The courts were under pressure. The streets had been punished. The police were fragile and entangled. Armed groups had gained power in the capital. If you were part of the circle that wanted Moïse gone, what clean path was left? A legal removal was contested. An election was not near. A local arrest would require men willing to challenge a president surrounded by official and unofficial forces. That is where the mercenary enters the story. Not as a monster from nowhere, but as a symptom. A mercenary appears when politics no longer trusts institutions, when money can rent courage, and when a country's crisis becomes an opportunity for outsiders and insiders to sell solutions. In this plot, the trail ran through South Florida, private security circles, Colombian veteran networks, Haitian fixers, financiers, gang outreach, political ambition, and the dream of future contracts. Why Colombians? Not because of cheap stereotypes, and not because anyone is born for this. Colombia endured decades of internal war that produced many trained soldiers, some retiring young, some carrying combat skills into a civilian world that did not always offer dignity in return. Private security recruiters knew where to find them. They knew which promises could sound believable. Bodyguard work, infrastructure protection, a legal arrest operation, good pay, a mission with official flavor. History made the pool. The plot came fishing. And even inside the Colombian group, the intent was not simple. The evidence shows that some leaders understood much more than the men beneath them. German Alejandro Rivera Garcia later admitted that he relayed the shift from kidnapping to murder. Other Colombians, relatives, and would-be recruits insisted that many rank-and-file men believed they were heading into a protection mission, an arrest mission, or security work. The most grounded truth is mixed. Some knew the mission had become killing. Others may have been deceived until the final days, or even the final night. But the Colombians could not have moved through Haiti alone. They did not possess the local language, political access, neighborhood map, gang contacts, or social permission needed to approach a president's home. Haitian and Haitian-American actors were indispensable. The force came from one place, the keys from another. James Solagis and Joseph Vincent helped coordinate on the ground. Former Senator John Joel Joseph appeared in the web of vehicles, contacts, and support. Rodolphe Ayar supplied money and weapons. Joseph Felix Badio surfaced again and again like smoke under a door. The South Florida layer mattered too. Antonio Intriago and Archangel Pretel Ortiz, tied to CTU security, handled recruitment, logistics, and tactical planning. Walter Vaintamilla helped finance the scheme. Christian Emmanuel Sanon, a Haitian-American doctor, appeared early as the man some conspirators imagined could rise after Moïse. Later, the imagined successor shifted toward figures with more direct legal or political utility, including a former judge who was fired during Moïse's confrontation with the courts. The assassination was not only a raid, it was a plan to replace power and harvest the rewards. The plot did not begin as one clean murder plan, at least not in the record that survived. Between April and July of 2021, the conspirators discussed ways to kidnap or remove Moïse. One plan imagined seizing him at his sister's house, drugging him, and forcing him to resign. Another looked to his return from an international trip on June 19th, 2021. These plans depended on Haitian allies, including supposed gang contacts. But the plans failed, one after another, and failure has a way of making desperate men more dangerous. That is the hinge in the dark. The mission shifted. Kidnapping became harder. Legal cover became thinner. The language of removal became the language of execution. Weapons were gathered. Ammunition appeared. Bulletproof vests, radios, flashlights, and goggles moved from Miami toward Haiti. Digital messages moved between conspirators like sparks under a dry roof. One man spoke of finally having the tools to do the work. Another, after the assassination, used language so cold it sounded less like politics and more like pest control. Now move the camera through the night. The hills above Port-au-Prince are dark. The house sits in Pèlerin. Outside, the city is tense, but the president's residence should be guarded by layers of protection. Men approach with weapons. A voice announces the operation as if it has official weight, invoking the shadow of the DEA, though the attackers are not acting for that agency. That detail matters. A false name can open a door faster than a bullet. Inside, Martin Moïse wakes to gunfire. Jovenel Moïse calls for help. The state is only minutes away and somehow unreachable. Later, Martine would describe a chilling thought. After the attackers left, she expected to see bodies of the security officers assigned to protect the residents. Instead, there were no fallen guards scattered like proof of a battle. That absence became one of the most haunting details of the night. Sometimes what is missing screams louder than what is found. The attackers enter the house. Myth would love thunder here, but the real terror is smaller. A door, a hallway, a room where a couple had been sleeping. A squad of former Colombian Special Forces soldiers, called the Delta Team, and other mercenaries storm the residence. President Moïse is fatally shot in his bedroom. Martin Moïse is seriously wounded and survives by lying between life and death while the killers move through the room. In the morning, Haiti has no elected president. And remember the promise from the beginning. Even the bullets would testify. In the trial record that later emerged in Miami, bullets recovered from Jovenel Moïse during the autopsy and another recovered from Martin Moïse during surgery matched a rifle carried and used by the Colombian Delta Team. That does not answer every question. It does not tell us every hidden patron, every bribe, every silence, every gate that opened before the attackers arrived. But it anchors the murder to more than rumor. The metal spoke. Immediately after the assassination, Haiti did not receive clarity. It received a vacuum. Claude Joseph, who had been acting prime minister, announced that he was in control. But Ariel Henry had already been named prime minister by Moïse shortly before the killing and had not yet taken office. There was no clean constitutional staircase to climb. The presidency was empty. Parliament was broken. The courts were fragile. The police were shaken. A country already living with too many keys now had no one everyone recognized as the keeper of the door. This is why the assassination did not restore order, even for those who imagined it might. It deepened the wound. A president who ruled by decree was gone, but the institutions he left behind were not suddenly healed. The men who wanted power did not inherit a stable machine. They inherited a shattered room. And into that room stepped not only politicians, but gangs, business interests, foreign diplomats, police factions, judges under threat, and ordinary Haitians forced once again to survive decisions made far above them. Almost immediately, the story split into versions. Some said the Colombian mercenaries were scapegoats, that the president's own guards or insiders had done the killing before the foreigners truly mattered. Others said the mercenaries were the killers, hired by a network that wanted Moïse removed and replaced. The first theory had emotional power because the security failure was so strange. The second gained strength as evidence, guilty pleas, and trial records accumulated. But suspicion alone is not proof, and proof does not always reveal the whole monster. By May of 2026, a federal jury in Miami convicted Arcangel Pretel Ortiz, Antonio Intriago, Walter Ventimilla, and James Salages for their roles in the plot. The record described a scheme to violently overthrow Moïse and install a hand-picked successor with the expectation of lucrative government contracts. It has named allies in the United States, Colombia, and Haiti. It described 22 former Colombian army soldiers, Haitian gang leaders, weapons, money, tactical equipment, and months of planning. The courtroom did not solve Haiti, but it turned rumor into a map. Still, a map is not the same as the whole territory. Some co-conspirators pleaded guilty, others testified. Some suspects remained in Haiti, where the justice system struggled under threats, gang violence, institutional weakness, and political pressure. By late 2025, a Haitian appeals court had ordered a new investigation and overturned an earlier indictment, throwing the domestic case into deeper uncertainty. That means the Miami verdicts matter, but they do not close the book. They name operators, they reveal channels, they do not fully expose every architect. This is where we have to be careful with the word opposition. It is too large, too convenient, too easy. Haiti had many people opposing Moïse, protesters angry about corruption, judges defending institutional limits, politicians protecting their careers, business elites fearing losses, citizens exhausted by insecurity, and opportunists smelling the profit of regime change. The evidence supports a coalition of fixers, financiers, security men, political aspirants, and local contacts. It does not allow us to throw one blanket over every person who opposed the president. The same caution applies to Moïse and the gangs. The record strongly shows that officials and state actors were accused of enabling armed groups and that poor opposition neighborhoods suffered from attacks connected to political survival. But Haiti's gangs were never obedient dogs. They were predators with their own hunger. They used politicians as politicians used them. That is the danger of this kind of bargain. Each side thinks it is holding the leash. Then one day, the leash is gone, and the animal knows the house better than the owner. So what was this, really? An assassination? Yes. A coup attempt? Yes, in design. A business scheme? Yes, in the way future contracts shimmered before the conspirators. A Haitian political crisis weaponized by foreign security entrepreneurs? Yes. A murder made possible by the hollowing of institutions? Yes. Again, that is why the story feels slippery. Everyone entered the room carrying a different hunger. Some wanted money, some wanted power, some wanted protection, some wanted revenge. Some may have believed they were saving the country. Others knew they were killing a man. And this is the tragic symmetry. Moïse tried to survive by leaning into a violent order that made him stronger in the streets and weaker in the state's soul. His opponents and opportunistic partners, unable or unwilling to rely on institutions, reached for their own rented force. One side privatized repression, the other privatized regime change. And the people, as always, were left between the checkpoints. The poor neighborhoods paid first, the markets paid, the roads paid, the families paid, the dead paid. After Moïse died, the key did not return to the people. That is the bitter part. The gangs did not fade, they grew bolder. In October 2021, at a ceremony meant to honor Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the revolutionary father of Haitian independence, Prime Minister Ariel Henry and his security detail were forced away by armed followers of Chérizier. Then Chérizier laid a wreath surrounded by gunmen. Imagine that image. The state arrives to honor the founder, and the armed street tells the state to leave. 1 month and 1 week after the assassination, on August 14th, 2021, an earthquake struck Haiti's south. Disaster should have opened the road to compassion. Instead, it revealed again who controlled the movement. Aid trucks carrying food, water, and medicine had to pass through areas influenced by armed groups, including Martesson, where gangs fought over territory and roads. Humanitarian relief became another negotiation with the marketplace of violence. The key was no longer only to the palace, it was to the stomach. From above, Haiti's capital became a set of locked gates, roads into Port-au-Prince, routes to the south, fuel terminals, markets, ports, neighborhood borders. Gangs learned that controlling movement meant controlling life. By 2026, monitors described armed coalitions, especially the alliance known as Vive Ensemble, controlling most of Port-au-Prince and its surrounding area. The numbers changed with the fighting, but the pattern was clear. The old bargain had grown into a beast too large for any single patron to command. This is what happens when violence is treated like a tool and not a fire. A politician thinks he can borrow it for one election, one protest, one neighborhood, one rival. A businessman thinks he can pay for protection until the market calms down. A gang leader thinks he can become the local state. A mercenary thinks he can fly in, do the job, collect the money, and leave the ghost behind. But violence remembers every hand that touched it, then it charges interest. And still, we must resist the lazy story that Haiti is only gangs. Haiti is also the nurse who keeps working even when the hospital is under threat. Haiti is also the nurse who turns a room into a school while the street outside belongs to armed men. The market women who know the price of rice and the price of fear. The families who remember Dessalines, Toussaint Louverture, Sanité Belair, Catherine Flon, and all the ancestors who made the empire tremble. Haiti is not chaotic by nature. Haiti is a nation forced to rebuild inside storms other people helped create. That is why sensational conspiracy versions feel too small, even when they borrow pieces of truth. They turn Haiti into a stage where foreign villains perform cleverness and Haitians become background noise. Or they turn every Haitian actor into a puppet as if local intelligence, ambition, fear, memory, and survival do not matter. The grounded story is more disturbing. It says a president can be killed not because one secret hand controlled everything, but because too many hands had learned to profit from collapse. The bedroom in Pelerin was the final scene of one plot, but it was not the beginning of the story. The road to that bedroom passed through the fall of a dictatorship, the dismantling of an army, the failures of police reform, the wounds of foreign intervention, the cholera graves, the empty parliament, the mandate dispute, the massacres in poor neighborhoods, the rise of the G9, the private security networks of South Florida, the recruitment of Colombian veterans, and the old Haitian elite habit of treating violence as a business partner. Look again at the key. In the beginning, it seemed literal. Who opened the gate? Who failed to defend the residence? Who allowed armed men to reach the president's room? But as the story widens, the key changes shape. It becomes the favor given to a gang. The bribe was offered to a guard, the silence of an official. The money was wired for equipment, the false promise made to a veteran. The neighborhood was abandoned by the state. The road is controlled by gunmen, the institution hollowed out until only its name remains. This is why the murder of Jovenel Moïse cannot be understood only as an attack on one man. It was an attack inside a country where the public monopoly on force had been dismantled piece by piece. That does not mean Haiti had no state. It means the state had been forced, tempted, pressured, and corrupted into sharing power with armed actors, sometimes competing with them, sometimes feeding them, sometimes hiding behind them. And when power is shared in the dark, nobody knows who will own it by morning. Moïse himself remains a difficult figure. He was a president accused of authoritarian drift, ruling by decree, clashing with the judiciary, refusing to leave when many said his mandate had ended, and presiding over a period when armed repression scarred opposition neighborhoods. But he was also murdered in his own home, in front of his wounded wife, by men tied to a plot that treated Haiti like a prize to be captured. A man can endanger democracy and still be killed by a deeper disease. Two truths can share the same room. That room is what haunts the story, not because we enjoy the darkness, but because it reveals the shape of the country's crisis. How does a president surrounded by guards, police, political allies, gang relationships, and the machinery of office end up exposed in his bedroom? The answer is that those layers were never a wall. They were a marketplace. A wall has one purpose. A marketplace changes with the highest bidder, the most serious threat, the newest rumor, the latest opportunity. By the time the attackers arrived, the key had already been copied. Copied by old regimes that taught fear to serve politics, copied by elites who treated poor neighborhoods as territories to manage, copied by criminals who learned to govern through checkpoints, copied by state actors who tolerated what they could later deny, copied by foreign security men who saw Haiti's crisis as a business opening, copied by everyone who believed violence could be rented for one night and returned in the morning. But the weapon did not return. It stayed. It multiplied. It took roads, ports, markets, fuel, schools, hospitals, funerals, and sleep. It made the poor negotiate with armed strangers for the things citizenship should have guaranteed. It made politicians speak of security while ordinary people listened for motorcycles in the dark. It turned sovereignty into a toll. And that is the deeper tragedy. The assassination shocked the world because it reached the president, but Haitians had already been living under smaller assassinations of public life for years. So when we ask why Moïse was killed, the answer cannot be one sentence. He was killed because a transnational plot moved from removal to murder. He was killed because men with money and ambition believed they could install a new order and profit from it. He was killed because Colombian veterans could be recruited into a foreign crisis. He was killed because Haitian intermediaries supplied access. He was killed because the state had become too hollow to protect even its own head. And beyond all of that, he was killed because violence in Haiti had become tradable, a commodity, a service, a language of politics. Today, it could discipline a protest. Tomorrow, it could guard a road. The next day, it could remove a president. That is the old pattern. Powerful men treat violence like a hired hand, then act surprised when the hired hand learns the layout of the house. The ghost in this story is not only Moïse, it is the state that kept appearing in name only to disappear when people needed it most. Justice will also have to speak carefully to Colombia, not with blame thrown at a whole people, but with honesty about how war turns young men into instruments and then abandons many of them when the uniform comes off. Some of the Colombian veterans were known participants in the kill phase. Others may have entered under lies, but all of them moved through a world where military skill could be exported like machinery. That world is built by wars, private security companies, poverty, weak regulation, and men who know how to turn need into someone else's coup. And justice will have to face the international mirror. South Florida was not a rumor in this story. It was part of the staging ground. Equipment, money, planning, recruitment, and fantasy moved through that space with the confidence of people who believed Haiti could be rearranged. That has a long echo. Haiti has known foreign debt, foreign occupation, foreign missions, foreign apologies, and foreign silence. The assassination was not caused by outsiders alone, but outside hands were near the lock again. Now return one last time to the house in Pellerin. The night is still. The road climbs through the hills. The city below is breathing hard. Inside, the president is asleep. Outside, men with rifles are approaching. Somewhere before that moment, in a meeting, in a message, in a payment, in a silence, in a failure of duty, the key has already turned. That is the part that should trouble us. Not only the gunfire, not only the bedroom, the preparation, the permissions, the long corruption of the lock. A nation is not destroyed all at once. It is hollowed through habits. One exception for one powerful man. One gang is tolerated because it serves a purpose. One election delayed. One judge dismissed. One neighborhood was punished. One police unit is underpaid. One foreign contractor promising salvation. One businessman is treating the republic as a future contract. One lie told to armed men. One gate opened at midnight. Then people wake up and call it a mystery, but the land has been keeping receipts the whole time. So the question from the beginning returns, who sold the key? Maybe it was not one person. Maybe that is what makes the answer so frightening. The key was sold in pieces over the years by men who never imagined they would all meet in one bedroom. And when the bullet finally spoke, it told us where the killing came from. But the deeper evidence tells us why it was possible. In Haiti, the state had shared its shadow for too long, and one night, the shadow walked back through the door. The most terrifying thing about the assassination of Jovenel Moïse is not that a president could be killed in his own house. It was that by the time the killers arrived, so many people already knew the door was weak. Thank you for trekking the hidden trails of Latin America with me. If tonight's story unsettled you, subscribe and ring the bell, because Latin America's most intriguing stories are far from over.